It's just I'm doing it on a larger scale. Come out a little bit further. I think you could probably go a little darker overall. So again, I might grab that 2B pencil again. I don't think so though. I think we'll just use the HB and we'll just build it up gently. Okay. Go ahead and bring a layer it over there, layer over there, layer over there, layer over there. And again, I'm just doing the same thing. Now, again, you'll notice I keep starting back here because it's the darkest part. And where I've spent the least amount of time is out here at the edge. So what's going to happen is you're going to start to get, again, that gradation happening. So if I stay right in here, there'll be more gradation through here. So there'll be more bleed, as people would call it. There's a part where it's getting a little bit too much texture, so I'm going to grab that 2H again. And again, I could come in here, there's a little, sort of like a block that I need to fill in there, and a little, this edge seems a little, needs to be cleaned up. Like there's all these little bits being, munched out of it because of the paper texture. So if I want to make that edge a little straighter looking, I need to take some of those little, those little chunks, those little irregular shapes. They almost look like little puzzle pieces. And it's just the lighter pencil sliding around over the paper texture, creating those. But they are unwanted. Okay. So again, I'm just using this 2H and I'm putting a layer over some of these areas, and again, it's going to get deeper into the texture. Because it's getting deeper into the texture, it's going to look more, more uniform. The lines are going to look a little cleaner. It's just a really nice pencil to use to clean up these areas, to have a little bit more. It just has a nicer look, a more professional, cleaner sort of look to it. And I can control my edges. So again, I could I'm not trying to. I don't want these too crisp. But if I wanted to crisp a line, I can come right up to it. Like this is a little fuzzy, and so that means I need to go out to the edge of that and fill in that lighter little edge. That's what creates that fuzzy look. Is there's a gradation that's slightly lighter, getting lighter, and I'll just go in and I'll just go ahead and darken it. So that means it's no longer, take that gradation out, and now that feels like a cleaner edge. There's times you want to do that, like on this guy. I want to. On this guy, I don't. And so I'd be on these edges. I'd be still trying to kind of make sure I don't go all the way out to the edge, so I can come out here and then push it out a little bit and get a little bit of feathering or a little bit of a gradation, right? Just a little bit. So so this feels like a softer edge. Okay. So we've spent a lot of time in the darks and everything like that. So we're actually going to come back in here into the middle values. Oh, that's right, we want to do gradation. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. Again, I'm going to be using a lot more of either a finger swing or tapered stroke. This right here is a tapered stroke or a feathered stroke, again, where I'm only making a mark on the downward stroke. I'm trying to make sure that it's, again, coming down, touching, and then coming off, so that, again, you get a little bit more of that tapering. It's a little bit easier to get a nicer, just a nicer gradation, a nicer control over the pencil itself. And graphite, more than, say, other drawing media like charcoal or something like that, really takes time to build this up. There are saving methods to save time that we'll get into later, but for now we're going to go ahead and we're just rolling up our sleeves, and we're doing it, the long way. We're not taking any shortcuts this time. And the reason we want to do this is it will give us better control over our pencils. If we don't do this, then people will usually start, going in, oh, I'm going to just start smudging this, and I'm going to start, doing this, and doing techniques that, if they don't know how to use them properly, you never smudge with your fingers for starters. Like I know some people, oh, I just smudge. Oh, doesn't that look nice? No, actually it doesn't. It usually looks like someone came along and smudged your drawing. They got the drawing dirty with dirty fingers. That is not the look that we want. And if you're using graphite, you're not even going to use stumps or tortillons. Don't use that for graphite. Those are too overbearing. They destroy the paper as you're rubbing it over the paper. And graphite is I've called it the high maintenance medium of the art world, and it really is. Because if there's anything wrong with that paper, it just won't look right. And it will highlight that surface being a surface change. And it just won't look right. Now there's some people I've seen that really go and get into using graphite where they're really rough with it. And if you get really rough with it, you can pull it off. As long as it's clear, you're like, yeah, I'm going to get rough with this. But I mean, they're getting really rough. They're building up layers, and they're razor blading stuff off, and they're using a Brillo pad on stuff, and they'll throw around some just all kinds of like alcohol into the rubbing alcohol into the graphite, and spraying graphite on, and erasing it back with very heavy, just really working the surface. And the thing is, you have to really do that. You have to really layer it when you do that. Otherwise, it does not look right. It still looks like, oh, that looks kind of dirty. Once graphite starts to go into the surface of the paper, it starts to have this unclean, dirty look. It just doesn't, it's not as, it's like the difference between a watercolor. For those that know watercolor, if you use watercolor and you put it down very, very directly and let it dry, it has a beautiful luminosity that is destroyed the moment you start scrubbing it or overworking it. It's lost. It has to sit on top of the paper. Once that paper has been that texture of the paper has been played with too much and begins to break down, and it can happen very quickly. It does not have the same look. And if you really get into, again, I have friends, colleagues, and former professors that would do whatever they needed to with a watercolor. So there were no rules. They'd be scrubbing on it. They would be, again, scraping into it. They would do all sorts of stuff. But the moment you do that, you lose the luminosity. And that's that. For some people, they don't care. They're like, look, I'm not after that sort of a watercolor. And as long as you understand that and know that's the game you're playing, then you're fine. If you don't know what the game even is, then you're in trouble. Because usually that means that you're gonna end up with a painting that doesn't know what the rules are, and so the painting isn't very clear. So if I overwork it here, but I don't overwork it there, but I leave it there, but this one's really seriously worked, and then this one is not, and this area becomes like a patchwork quilt, not a good look. However, if you treat something where it's all been worked over and roughed up, well, then it's fine. If you have everything that's nice and pristine, then it's fine. If you have something that can't make up its mind what type of painting it is, that looks like an artist that couldn't make up its mind, which usually means that it's going to have an amateurish, I don't know what I'm doing, I haven't made a decision look, and you don't want that in your drawing. We want drawings that are very clear. We want drawings that say, yes, I can make a decision. You want drawings that say, yes, I know what I'm doing, and this is what it is. You want, same thing in your paintings and watercolors. You want to be very clear about what you're doing. You don't want there to be a lot of guessing games. You want the viewer to look at it and go, okay, I know what they're doing. And if the viewer looks at yours and go, yeah, I don't know what he's doing, all those areas that are undecided start to look like mistakes. If I start to overwork my drawing, the areas that are overworked are going to start to look like mistakes. So sometimes in people that have been in classes and drawing classes and watercolor classes, there's like a favorite term, overworked. Oh, that's overworked. Oh, people, and they just love, some people just love that term. I swear they just enjoy that so much, throwing that out there. And that doesn't mean that it's not a valid point. But sometimes, you know, the moment the integrity of the paper was compromised, they'd be like, oh, overworked, you know, throw it away. Can't do anything about that. But I had another instructor who was like, look, okay, that was an HB, this is a 2H. Yeah, the paper's been compromised a little bit. Since it's been compromised, you're going to compromise it more. So sometimes when things, people are like, oh, it's overworked, it's not that it's overworked, it's that it's underworked. And if you're going to make it look like it was purposeful, well, then you've got to roll up your sleeves and really get in there and brutalize the paper, so it looks like you meant to overwork it, not that it was a mistake that you overworked it. And that's a very important knowing how to distinguish the difference. Again, I'm using finger swings and tapered strokes while I'm creating this. And I'm trying to get these are my light middle values, these are my darker middle values. So the middle values next to the core shadow are going to be darker. Finger swing, tapered stroke, finger swing, tapered stroke. So again, I keep switching between the two. That's not a bad thing. It's just understanding how and what the difference is, and you know what it gives you. And a lot of that's just going to come from actually drawing, where you go, oh, okay, I need to fill this in. Well, if I need to fill something in, or a term that most artists that sends chills down their spine to say this in an artistic standpoint, but to say color it in, and it still makes me guilty that I'm even going to use this example. But if I need to fill something in, or quote unquote color it in, I'm going to be using just a side to side finger stroke. You know, if I'm trying to go back to where I'm using gradations, I'm going back to a tapered stroke. So that's usually how I'm using it. When I start to, oh, I need to fill this in. Okay, regular finger stroke. Oh, now I'm going back to value. Okay, tapered stroke. And that's how it's normally used for those little, you know, that little bit. Oh, I need to fill this in. Okay, fill that in. Now I need to go back to gradations. Okay, now I'm going to, you know, you're going to keep changing it up. And what is this? Okay, this is my 2H. And again, we want that. We want this to have, you know, where we want to be switching between those. We want to be looking and learning. And so while you're drawing, you're constantly asking yourself questions. Oh, would it be better if I did this? Oh, would it be better if I did that? And experiment. You might go, well, normally I do a tapered stroke, but let's say I did just a regular finger stroke. How would that change it? And don't be so locked in, or don't be so rigid with some of this. I want you to understand that I do a little bit, you know, I'll do this, and of course I do get into ruts. I've been doing this for a while, but there's a time where, you know, where you're like, hey, I need to get out of my rut. So there's times I'll go, okay, this is what I normally do, but I'm switching it up. Even though I'm like, I don't know, no, I'm switching it up. I want to see a little bit different than, you know, so because I'm just experimenting. I've done this for a lot of years, but sometimes I'm like, oh, you know what? Well, I thought I should do this, but I zigged when I should have zagged, and that zig is actually better than my zag, and worked better than I thought it would. I know that in the beginning you're just trying to, it's all that you can do to even control this, to control your drawing. It's you know, very hard to get that to again have the control you want. I'm going to come over here, and I'm actually going to go all the way out and try to get just a little bit of a gradation from the middle values to the light values. So there's just a little bit, I need a little bit of a gradation. Okay. And so, I've got a 2H. I'm going to grab my 4H because I think my 2H is just a little too dark. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab my 4H and very gently, using, again, a tapered stroke, try to get just a little bit of a gradation through those light values. Just a little bit of a gradation. Just a scotch. Okay. Now I got to be careful because if I spend time just right here, I'm going to get a line. Now, if I did it light enough, and I'm getting a little bit of a line right now, which is okay, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm actually going to make it darker next to it, so that'll be this gradation will be lighter because I'm going to darken this through here. So that's why I kept it really light, because you can always, it's better to go lighter so you can darken it than to go too dark and then have to lighten it. So again, not a big deal, but I'm trying to get a little bit, just a little bit of a gradation, again, into those light values, just a scotch, so that it's not just a line and then an abrupt ending, but there's a little bit of that, of a gradation. So again, just a little bit of gradation. Now again, this is where the illusion is going to happen, and that's why I have to take extra care and caution that I don't destroy it. So again, I've got this 4H pencil, and I've got a little bit of a gradation happening, and now I'm going to bring this value all the way back, so it's going to darken this, so this will be the lightest. Now I'm not going to darken it. There's one place I'm not going to darken it, and that's going to be the highlight, but through here a lot of this is going to go slightly darker, so this is not a line. So hopefully you understand what I did there, that I originally left that a little lighter, so when I made my gradation and this got darker along that line, that what I'm going to do now is I'm pulling it out and I'm darkening this, bringing this down into here, and I'm going to darken this and bring that out. And by the time I do that, this will still be the lightest because of the way I planned that out. In other words, right now I'm darkening this so it's not lighter than that. Because if it is, then it's wrong. So again, we're going to go ahead and just keep working on this, putting some value down there, coming around that highlight, come around the highlights. You know, we have to have a little bit of value around the highlight in order for the highlight to stand out. That's another way to ask yourself, is it dark enough? Because if I can't see the highlight, that means what's surrounding it, because that's just white paper, that means what's surrounding it is not dark enough. So I was being a little bit on the timid side. So now I'm actually using a little bit of a wrist swing. Actually, it's kind of, yeah, it's a wrist swing, to fill this in, because I need this outer rim to be a little darker than what it is. So I'm trying to darken this in a uniform way, and so again, I'll use, you know, well, this is almost straight up and down, but it's the same thing like a side to side. I'll use it to go ahead and fill in an entire area very quickly, because it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't dark enough. Now, I haven't darkened it a ton, maybe half a step of value. And so we haven't darkened it very much, but just this little bit goes a long way. I'm going to go ahead and grab my kneaded eraser and pull that back out. Now again, some of it had gotten a little bit of value on it, so now it shines. Now that highlight, you know, really kind of reads. Now we're going to come back here, because again, this is the lightest part. This has been filled in. I'm going to use my HB pencil, and I'll start to try to make more gradations through the dark middle values, because my light middle values have gotten darker. So that means for those to be the correct value, that the middle values, my darker middle values, have to be slightly darker because my lighter middle values got darkened. So it's a little back and forth, but the idea is that we want it to, again, if we take the time, and again I'm using my HB pencil because I have all this graphite on here that's the H's, which is fine, but it wouldn't have darkened. If I tried to get a 4H and darken this enough, I need a base of at least the HB pencil. I could go back in with a 4H and fill in little stuff, or with a 2H and fill in little stuff, but I needed sort of a global darkening, and so I needed a darker pencil. And I'm not using a 4B, that would be too dark, and I'm not using a 2B, that would be probably a little bit too dark, but the HB seems to be doing exactly what I want. So that's the one I'm using, and you know, that's, again, it's doing what I need for the drawing. Again, I still have my eyes out of focus. This is starting to get darker. That's a little bit lighter. And again, so that's what we want. We have the darker middle values are back now, getting lighter as they come across. And again, that's what we're looking for. That's what we want. And again, it can be really subtle. Sometimes it can be a little mind-bending. We can start to tell ourselves, start to try to get that self-talk. Oh no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Squint your eyes, take your eyes out of focus. If it's not fine, don't be afraid to say, nope, need to do a little bit more. Nope, need to do a little bit more. You know, don't be afraid to tell yourself that. Sometimes we start to get a little afraid to tell ourselves because we put so much time into it. It took longer than what we thought, and we just, you know, want to be done with it. If that's the case, give yourself a break. Go somewhere, get up, stretch a little bit, you know, go see your favorite pet or whatever, or, you know, walk around a little bit, go outside, get a couple of, you know, breaths of fresh air, take a 15-20 minute break, and then come back to it. And a lot of times that's all that's needed. Because we draw for such long amounts of time, the breaks are really important to help revitalize, sort of to give us, you know, that desire to go on a little bit or something. But again, we've got this where it's just happening. We're starting to get that gradation. I'm going to get back in here with my 2H pencil. And again, this 2H pencil is not as dark as the HB, so again, I can use this to fill in some areas and to get just a little bit nicer gradation happening, and it will look a little bit smoother. So it's a win-win-win when we use this, and we want to use that. So again, we'd come on over here and okay. And so again, we're starting to get this illusion. Now, if I wanted to, I could come over here with my 4H again and check to see if maybe I can get just a little bit more gradation through my light tones. Okay? And maybe not everywhere, but maybe as it starts to bleed into those middle values, that we can get just a little bit more on those edges. So now I've got an HB pencil, and where the middle values are coming around here, I'm going to darken those just a bit, just a scotch. They're going to be gradating, getting lighter as they come out, something about like that. They're going to be getting a little spreading out, you know, at the base, almost like a curved little triangle going around the edge here. All right. So now I think we're starting to have it doing what we want in the middle values. So, and the reason we're actually going to have to come back now and start to look at the shadow family, because the shadow family, everything here in the lights is supposed to be lighter than anything over here in the shadows, and everything in the shadows here is supposed to be darker than anything over here in the lights. And this reflected light, it looks like it's darker, or pardon me, that doesn't look like it's darker, it looks like it's lighter than the middle values. Now some of that can be an illusion, but I think it's too bright, and the way you can do that is I've got this little, this is a value isolator. It's very easy to make. This is a piece of just 100-pound paper. I could use cardstock, I could use poster board, I could use anything. I could use little note cards or what have you, and I've just punched little holes through them. And what I can do is I can put this right there. And by isolating this, this is over here is in the shadows, and this over here is in the lights, and look there, that's darker than this. That is wrong. So what that means is that my shadows are going to have to go a little darker, but especially the reflected light. So I'm going to come in here into my reflected light. I'm using a 2H, and now I'm using a wrist swing, and I'm just going to darken this down. Again, I'm using sort of a wrist. I'm using a wrist swing for this. Sort of pivoting my wrist on the edge of the board. I'm out of the camera, so it's hard to see that, but that's what's happening. Now, this still looks lighter, but, and it is. Okay, cool. But here's what's going to happen. So we want that reflected light. It has to look like it's reflected light. As we start to darken this, it won't look like reflected light anymore because it's gone. It seems like we're turning the lights out. But we have to understand what we're going to do, because what we're going to do from here is we're going to then darken everything in the shadow family so that this reflected light looks lighter once again. So I'm going to go ahead and just try to, I have an HB pencil, so I was doing some of that with a 2H to make it really light, very subtle, very soft. I'm now coming in with an HB because I think it needs just a little bit more value in here. So again, we're continuing to bring this around, making a gradation out of it. Again, continuing to make a gradation out of this. Now that reflected light hasn't completely disappeared, which is a good thing. So it's still there, but it's darker than what it was. But now if we put this on here like so, we can see that, let's actually get I think we're using two different dots. If we use this here, this is now darker than that. Okay, that means that's dark enough. So we're like, all right, yeah, that looks dark enough, great. We're going to go ahead, and we're losing the occlusion shadow where this is touching, so I'm going to just make sure that's been reestablished. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to take my HB pencil really quickly. We're almost done with this thing. And we're going to go ahead and darken the dark tones. So I'm going to use these dark tones. And as I darken the dark tones, an interesting thing happens to the reflected light. It's going to start to look lighter once again. Because reflected light needs to be there. It needs to look like it's lighter. It's the lightest of the shadow family. But it had gotten too light because we darkened everything over here. Now as we darken the shadows once again, the reflected light will start to look brighter and brighter and brighter. Now we don't want it to look too bright, but we do need to have it feel like it's, coming back a little bit more. It softened it just too much. And so I'm going to come over here and darken some of the core shadow, come in here and work in the dark tones. There's also reflected light up here. hopefully we can start to see that too, that there's a little bit of this reflected light up here. And again, the more we work on these areas with the dark tones and darken them slightly, the more the reflected light will be able to be seen. It will look a little brighter. So okay. This is actually too much of a bar, so we need to bring this out. Should flare out kind of like a little rounded cone or something. Okay, so as this has gotten darker, this down here is looking lighter once again. And I'm going to go into the coarse shadow just a bit, because I think we need to get, there's some patchiness to it. But again, we're really close. This is, you know, a good looking sphere. We can see all the different families in the sphere, the light tones, the middle values, the light tones, the middle values, the highlight, the coarse shadow, the dark tones, reflected light. They're all very clear. When they're very clear like that, that's when we have the illusion that we want. I'm going to go ahead, there's a gradation that needs to happen right where the coarse shadow starts to bleed into those darker middle values. And so it's not very far. I'm not going to be working very far into the light, but it's just right where the light and shadow transition. There needs to be just a little bit more of a gradation than what I have. And so we're going to go ahead and put just a little bit more of a gradation in there. And I'm going to grab a 2B because I think some of this again needs to extend into those dark tones just a little bit more. And there's some patchiness here. This is a little bit lighter. This is a little bit lighter through here. This is a little bit lighter through there. Again, I'm taking my eyes out of focus. I'm trying to see really clearly what's happening there. That needs a little more transition. So again, so we've got this sphere that we've done. I think we can do just a little bit more of this gradation with this 2B right where the core shadow and the light meet. So there's a gradation into the core shadow. And it's really important that we have just enough of a gradation that it turns the corner. If it's too abrupt, it doesn't look quite right. It's called the Terminator. So you have where the light and where the light stops and the shadow starts, and then the core shadow is actually just a little bit over from there into that, you know, from what we call the Terminator. So again, we're going to go ahead and put that in, or get that a little bit more of the gradation happening. And I think we got a little bit of weirdness going on here, and then a little splotchy is all. When I say weirdness, that's what I mean. Just a little splotchy through there. That's a little better. We could just very lightly try to see if we get just a little bit more gradation happening in there. Just a tiny bit. I think that's, again, looking much better. And then again, we could say, all right, well, and you know, again, if it's getting a little flat because this is almost white paper through here, again, we can come in here into the. So this is the process. You're constantly asking yourself, is it enough? Is it enough? Do I need to go and change a little bit more? Do I need to change a little bit more? Do I need to change a little bit more? And if the answer is yes, don't be afraid to say, okay, let's do it. Let's get this to change a little bit more. Let's get this to change the way it needs to be. I'm kind of, you can probably see, I'm twisting in my chair so I can get, because I don't want to move the paper quite so much for you guys, you know, turn it upside down on the side and all that sort of stuff. I would do that if I was working on my own, doesn't matter, but I want you to be able to see this without disturbing, you know, the image, you know, too much in terms of flipping it around as I'm working on it. So I'm really kind of jumping around in this chair I'm sitting at, so you can see, you know, what I'm doing. So again, there's the middle values here are gonna curve around and transition just a scotch up there. This again is just getting a little bit darker up through here, just a little bit. This is coming around. It's almost a little too dark. I got too much of a hook there, so I grab my little knead eraser, pinch out a little tip, and again you can go ahead and start taking some of that out a little bit. you know, in case that's just a little too much, and sometimes it is, and it looked like was just a bit much. And so again, we can start to, and so it's just little bits like that can start to really give this, start to really make this feel much better as we're working on this. And again, this is, you know, looking really, really good. This is what we want. It's, you know, doing what we want it to do. And we could even get to the point where, like, okay, you know, what about this cast shadow? This cast shadow maybe looks a little bit light through there. So I've got this 2H pencil. I'd go in there and just knock it, darken it just slightly. You hear me say sometimes, no, knock it down. And that's what I mean. I mean, make it a little darker, make it a little darker, make it a little darker. There's times we need that. And so that it reads, if this starts to look like it's too light, if this is as light as anything over here, that's too light. It's cast shadow. It can't be as light as anything in the light family. If it's as light as the reflected light, then that's fine. But again, we want to make sure that this is dark enough that it feels like cast shadow. So again, we've got our little sphere here, and we have light tone, we have light middle value, dark middle value, highlight. We have core shadow, we have dark, the dark tones and the light dark tones, and we have reflected light here, and we've got reflected light there. And by doing that, we've got something that's really looking nice. You know, is really having a very nice illusion, you know, a nice gradation, all this good stuff. Now, if I wanted to take this to the next level, like let's say I really needed this to be clean, more so than what it is already, I'd be using my 4H pencil, and for the next hour, I'd just be going, okay, I need to make this gradation a little bit better. I'm going to stick around here. That's a little patchy. I'm going to come over here. This needs a little bit darkening through there. You know, it's just little bits. And through doing that, it'll get better and better and better and better. And with that 4H, you can't, you know, we don't want to really change the value. All we're doing with this is we're just trying to make our gradations a little nicer here, trying to fill in a patch there, trying to, you know, take out some more of the texture. And it would take me another hour just going over this over and over and over again. Like, I still think it's a little blown out through here. So again, I might go, you know, and spend some time on those light values. You don't want you don't want to disappear. That's the thing we have to watch out for. If we spend too much time there, it's gonna fade, and it won't look like light values anymore. It'll start to look like our middle values. And so it's this balancing act as we're working. You know, how much is enough? And this is you know, if we're working from life, it's a little easier because we can go ahead and look up there and reference what we're seeing. You know, look up there and then look down at the drawing, look up there, look down at the drawing. This has just been done from memory because I've done hundreds of these spheres, and it's not bad. It's really creating that illusion. It's doing a really good job, and you know, that's what we want when we're drawing. We want to have something that has very clear, clean, you know, shadows on it, so we can see what it is. We know what's happening on it. So this again is the sphere, using value to create that sphere with a 3D look. Now this is again would be a light sphere, and in fact is a little bit, because this paper is so light. Again, this line is almost too dark. It looks a little bit like it's a cartoon. So again, if this line, this outside contour line, is darker than the value of the light tones, well, then it's going to start to look like, again, a cartoon line. Now, sometimes we can get away with this little trick, and that is you go to that line and you make a gradation coming this way. So that means the reflected light, the brightest part, will be just in from this a little bit. We can certainly do that. That's, again, just a little subtle manipulation that, again, can really help the illusion. So again, just a little bit of a gradation coming off that edge. Don't take away that original value. It's still there. We're just doing a slight gradation in a couple places. And again, that can just help just a little bit. So I go, okay, all right, so that's turning the corner just a slight. It's turning a little bit as it's going away from me. And on something that's really light, that little slight edge manipulation becomes really, you know, it can really make the difference. There is going to be a part where it gets so light that we can't tell, you know, where it's going to disappear as far as that goes, like so. Wow, I kind of have a little one that I missed the edge and it straightened out. So I'd have to come in there and again redo that just slightly. That's a 2B. That would be a no, don't do that one. 4H, lightest pencil we've got, and we go ahead and try to redo that. And I erased it, so sometimes just erasing it, all of a sudden it will go darker just because you use that eraser a little bit too much. And that's what happened. But again, I have just enough of the edge, and again, I'm losing the edge up here, so again, I could just use it just a little bit. That's an HB. That's too dark. Use a 4H. And again, try to make this edge a little bit lighter, a little darker here as it goes into the shadow, and a little bit lighter as it comes out here, and then it disappears. Or it gets lighter and lighter and lighter still. So again, just little bits like that really help, you know, create that illusion, you know, this edge continuing around and then it disappears. Same thing down here. This little edge down here just picks it up just a little bit of a gradation as it goes around and turns underneath, comes out here a little bit, and then it begins to disappear. Okay. Little things like that really help. If you've done this this is your first time, don't worry about little stuff like that. Try to get the big stuff. Try to get it so you can see very clearly what's a light value, middle value, core shadow, dark tone, reflected light, and then we have right here. Now I haven't darkened it. This would be the time to do it though, is the cast shadow has to be darker than the core shadow. So this cast shadow, where's my 4B? This cast shadow has to start to get a little darker, so we go, okay, so that's a cast shadow. It's the cast shadow wrapping up the object, and so it goes a little darker than the core shadow. We also have that, again, the occlusion shadow has to be very clear. You have to make sure that this is, again, a little crisper edge, perhaps. Just right through here, not all the way around, just a little bit right through there. Just little nuances. And again, now we've got this 3D looking sphere. So go ahead and give that a shot using the 5 pencils. Sit down and make yourself, you know, a nice little drawing of a sphere. Be more creative. And if you're like worried about drawing the sphere, I didn't show that, but I could take, let's say I wanted a template, and I could use this for a template, just trace around it, or you could use, you know, just some sort of a can, and I could put a can down here, and I could trace the can to give me a nice circle, and then take that circle and turn it into that sphere using all those wonderful form shadows. The reason I'm telling you to trace it is it takes the pressure off in terms of getting this nice circle, because we're not trying to worry about drawing at this point. We're only trying to worry about the values, not the drawing part of the circle. So yeah, you use a template. Use something that's round. You know, you use a can of tuna fish or whatever you like, and go ahead and make a circle, and then turn that circle into a sphere. All right. So you guys enjoy this. Be more creative. This is, you know, Kevin McCain. I've enjoyed our time together with you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.